You stopped wanting to go out, and somewhere in the silence of that you wondered if something was wrong with you. Not the kind of wrong that shows up in conversations or gets named in polite company. The quiet kind, the private kind, the specific, interior unease of someone who used to move through the social world with at least the appearance of ease, who used to fill their calendar and their weekends and their evenings with the kind of activity that signals to everyone watching, including yourself, that you are engaged with life and present in the world, and not slowly, deliberately, inexplicably withdrawing from it. And now you prefer the stillness, not because you are depressed, not because something broke in you and left you incapable of the energy that social existence requires, not because you gave up on people or decided the world was not worth engaging with. Something shifted, something interior and structural and entirely beyond the reach of the explanations that other people offer when they notice you have gotten quieter, more selective, more genuinely comfortable in the spaces that most people flee from. Something woke up, and what woke up changed the calculation entirely. Ely changed what felt worth the energy, changed what the body was willing to enter, and what it quietly, consistently, sometimes inexplicably refused. Change the experience of social environments from something neutral or pleasant into something that now carries a specific, physical cost that simply was not there before. This is not social anxiety. This is discernment, and the distance between those two things is the distance between a wound and a wisdom, between something that happened to you and something that developed in you. Here is the brutal truth that most conversations about introversion and sensitivity and the preference for solitude consistently fail to include. The spiritually awake person does not stay home because the world overwhelmed them and they needed to recover. They stay home because they develop the specific interior clarity to recognize before the event, before the commitment, before the energy expenditure, what a given environment will actually cost them and what it will actually return. And in the honest accounting that genuine awakening produces, most of what the social world offers does not pass the test. Not because the world is bad, because they are no longer willing to pay what unconscious social engagement costs a consciousness that has become genuinely permeable, genuinely present, and genuinely unwilling to perform its way through spaces that do not serve the deeper work it is committed to. The staying home is not retreat. It is the most honest response to a world that has not yet caught up to where you are. What follows is the precise, psychological, spiritually grounded account of why. Before the awakening, your nervous system processed social environments the way most people do, with a kind of efficient, relatively unconscious filtering that allowed you to be present in a room without absorbing everything the room contained. The noise, the emotional undercurrents, the gap between what people were saying and what they were actually feeling, all of it registered somewhere below the level of conscious attention without producing the specific, full-body, immediately felt response that it produces now. After the awakening, the filtering changes, or more accurately, it dissolves. What you now experience in social environments is not a filtered version of the room. It is the room itself, the emotional temperature of very person present arrives in your system before you have consciously processed a single word. The inauthenticity in a conversation lands in your body as a specific physical sensation, a tightening, a subtle wrongness, an interior dissonance that your nervous system registers with the accuracy of a finely calibrated instrument responding to something that is slightly, unmistakably out of alignment. The performance that most social interaction requires the careful management of what is said and what is left unsaid, the collective agreement to maintain surfaces that everyone present knows are surfaces, the specific social theater of people presenting curated versions of themselves to other people, presenting curated versions of themselves, and calling the resulting exchange connection. You feel all of it, not conceptually, in your body, as an energetic reality that requires active processing and genuine recovery time. Here is the first brutal realization that spiritually awake people must eventually stop arguing with. Your nervous system is not malfunctioning when it responds this way. It is functioning at a level of sensitivity that was always your actual baseline, a baseline at the unconscious defenses of the pre-awakening period were suppressing. The awakening did not create the sensitivity. It removed the suppression. And what you are experiencing now, the specific, sometimes overwhelming permeability of someone who can no longer maintain the comfortable distance that most people navigate social life from, is not something that happened to you. It is something that became visible to you. And the visibility changes everything, because you cannot unknow what your nervous system now knows about the cost of unconscious social engagement. Cannot unfeel what your body now registers in environments that ask you to be less present, less honest, less genuinely yourself than your current level of development requires. So you stay home. Not as a permanent retreat from all human connection, not as the giving up of someone who found the world too hard and decided to stop engaging, but as the specific, intelligent, energetically sound decision of someone whose nervous system has become too honest to spend itself on environments that cannot receive what it is genuinely carrying. Here is the second realization that is harder to receive, but more important to understand. Tanned. The people who cannot understand why you no longer come, who read your preference for home as withdrawal, as antisocial behavior, as something to be fixed or worried about or gently challenged, are not wrong to be concerned. They are concerned from within a framework that has not yet registered what yours now clearly shows. That presence, real, unmanaged, genuinely available presence, is not infinitely renewable, that it has a source, that the source requires specific conditions to replenish, and that unconscious social engagement is not neutral for someone whose awakening has made them genuinely, fully, unavoidably present in every room they enter. Your home is not where you hide from the world. It is where you remember what you are before the world gets the chance to ask you to be something else. The world has a story about people who prefer home. It is a story about avoidance, about comfort zones not being challenged, about the slow, gentle, well-intentioned withdrawal of someone who needs to be encouraged back into the productive friction of social engagement before they disappear entirely into the comfortable smallness of a life lived too carefully. That story is not about you. And continuing to apply it to yourself, continuing to interpret your preference for stillness through the framework of someone who needs to be pushed back out into the world is one of the most specific and most costly misreadings of what is actually happening in your interior life. Here is what you are actually doing when you stay home. You are integrating. The spiritually awake nervous system is constantly processing not just the experiences of the immediate present, but the accumulated, layered, deeply archived material of a psyche that is engaged in the specific, slow, non-linear work of genuine transformation. That work requires conditions, quiet, spaciousness, the specific absence of external demand that allows the interior process to move at its own pace, without being interrupted by the social performances that external environments consistently require. Every hour of genuine solitude that you protect is an hour in which something invisible but essential is being completed. A connection being made between an experience and its genuine meaning. A pattern being recognized from a depth that the busy surface of social life prevents access to. A layer of conditioning. NG being examined and released not through effort, but through the specific, patient, unhurried attention that only stillness makes available. You are also, in ways that you may not have fully named, protecting something. The spiritually awake person develops a relationship with their own interior life that is without drama, without the performance of someone who has decided they are unusually deep, genuinely, substantively richer than what most external social environments provide access to. The interior conversation is more honest. The interior questions are more real. The specific quality of being genuinely present with your own consciousness, without the management, without the performance, without the constant calibration of self-presentation that social environments require, produces a quality of aliveness that most social interaction does not match. And once you have felt that quality, once your nervous system has tasted the specific, nourishing aliveness of genuine interior presence, the environments that do not provide it begin to feel not hostile, but thin, insufficient, like a meal that does not actually feed you regardless of how beautifully it is presented. Is the brutal truth at the center of this section. Most social interaction is not connection. It is the performance of connection, two managed versions of two people meeting in a carefully maintained middle ground, where neither person is fully present and both people leave having exchanged pleasantries rather than genuine contact. The spiritually awake person can feel the difference between these two things with a precision that was not available before the awakening. And once the difference is felt truly, physically, unmistakably felt the performance of connection begins to produce a specific loneliness that is more acute than the honest solitude of simply staying home. You are not avoiding life by staying home. You are refusing to participate in the elaborate social theater that most people mistake for living, and that refusal, however misunderstood by the people who cannot yet see what you see, is one of the most spiritually intelligent choices. Available to someone at your stage of development, there is something that accumulates in the spiritually awake person who honors their need for solitude, something that does not have a simple name and does not announce itself through rough the visible markers that the external world uses to measure a life in progress, something that builds in the quiet, in the stillness, in the specific protected interior space that other people spend their evenings and weekends filling with noise. It is called depth. And depth, genuine, hard-won, interior depth, is the rarest and most transformative resource available to a human life, rarer than intelligence, rarer than talent, rarer than ambition or discipline or any of the qualities that the conventional framework of success consistently celebrates. Because depth cannot be acquired through effort alone. It cannot be accumulated through the efficient processing of external experiences. It requires the one thing that most people are least willing to give it: time in the interior, genuine, unhurried, undistracted time in the interior. Every evening you spent in genuine solitude rather than in the performance of social engagement was an evening of building. Every morning you sat in the quiet before the noise of the day arrived and allowed deeper currents of your own consciousness to surface and be attended to. That was construction. Invisible construction. The kind that produces no immediate, measurable, externally visible results, and that looks from the outside like nothing happening. The deepest things always look like nothing from the outside, until suddenly they do not. Here is the psychological truth that the conventional framework of productivity and social engagement cannot accommodate. The spiritually awake person who honors their solitude is not falling behind the people who fill every moment with external activity. They are building something those people are not building, cannot build, because building it requires the specific conditions that their perpetual external engagement prevents: a relationship with their own consciousness that is so intimate, so honest, so deeply familiar that they carry in every situation they eventually choose to enter, a quality of genuine presence that the externally oriented person simply does not have access to. This presence is not a performance. It is not the cultivated stillness of someone practicing mindfulness as a technique. It is the natural, organic result of a person who has spent significant time in genuine interior contact, who knows their own depths the way a master knows their instrument. Night. Who can be fully present in a room because they are genuinely present in themselves? Who can meet another person with the specific, rare, completely irreplaceable quality of attention that comes only from someone who has developed the capacity for genuine attention through the practice of directing it inward? And here is what this presence does when it finally, selectively enters the world. It changes rooms, not loudly, not through assertion or performance, or the deliberate projection of someone trying to create an effect. Simply by being genuinely there fully, without management, without the protective distance that most people maintain between themselves and direct experience. The spiritually awake person who has honored their solitude carries into every chosen engagement a quality of realness that most environments have forgotten was possible. The staying home was never the withdrawal of someone leaving the world behind. It was the preparation of someone getting ready to meet it finally, completely without pretense, on terms that actually mean something. Here is where the philosophical dissolves into the personal, where the understanding stops being something you are hinking about and becomes something you are feeling in your body, as the specific recognition of your own life being described with an accuracy you did not expect. You have been apologizing for the staying home, not always with words, with the specific, almost invisible apology of someone who feels the need to justify their solitude to a world that reads it as a problem, who qualifies their need for stillness with explanations about being tired, about needing to recharge, about the next event they will definitely attend to prove they are not withdrawing, who constructs elaborate social reasons for the interior truth that the staying home is simply, honestly, genuinely where they are most alive. Stop apologizing. Not because the world does not deserve an explanation, because the explanation was never for the world. It was for the version of yourself that has not yet fully accepted that what your soul requires is not a symptom to be managed. It is a design to be honored. Your nervous system knows things that your social conditioning has been trying to override for years. It knows when an environment is genuinely nourishing and when it is consuming. It knows when a connection is real and when it is the performance of connection wearing real connection's clothing. It knows when your presence is wanted for who you actually are and when it is wanted for the specific utility you provide to someone else's management of their own interior. It has always known these things. You have not always been willing to let it direct your choices. Here is what this moment is asking of you: not to withdraw permanently from the world, not to make the solitude a permanent condition, or to use the spiritual framework of awakening as justification for the avoidance that part of you knows is still present beneath the genuine discernment. The question to hold honestly is the difference between the two, between the solitude that builds something and the solitude that protects a wound. Between the staying home that is genuine interior work and the staying home that is the fear of genuine contact dressed in spiritual language. Both exist. Both require honest examination. And only you and the specific interior, deeply private honesty of genuine self-examination that the solitude makes possible can distinguish between them. What genuine awakening asks is not that you retreat from the world permanently. It asks that you engage with it consciously, selectively, from the genuine interior rather than from the habituated performances of the pre-awakening period. That when you choose to enter a room, you enter it fully, not managing, not performing, not calculating the correct presentation of yourself for the specific audience, fully, as the complete, unmanaged, genuinely present person that your solitude has been building. And when you need the home, when the interior work requires the stillness, when the nervous system signals its need for the specific replenishment that only genuine solitude provides, you honor that signal. Without apology, without the elaborate justification of someone who has not yet fully accepted that what their soul requires is legitimate. Simply, cleanly, with the quiet authority of someone who has learned to trust what they know. Here is the final truth that your soul has been waiting for the script to name. The world does not need more of your performance. It has performance in abundance. Every social gathering, every public space, every digital environment is saturated with the managed presentations of people who have not yet discovered you have discovered that the most powerful thing a person can bring to any room is the honest, present, completely unmanaged reality of who they actually are. That is what your solitude has been building. That is what the staying home has been protecting. That is what the world will encounter when you walk through the door, not more often, but more completely. Not more available, but more genuinely there. Your home is sacred, not because it walls the world out, because it keeps you in contact with your own soul, in relationship with your own depths, in the specific, nourishing, irreplaceable communion with your own interior that makes everything you eventually bring to the external world genuinely, unmistakably real. You are not built for every room. You were built for the rooms where your full presence changes something, and your solitude has been preparing you for exactly those rooms. Honor the stillness. Trust the staying. What you are building in the quiet will be worth everything the noise was costing you. You are not withdrawing from life. You are finally, completely, without apology, living it, on terms that are genuinely yours, at a depth that was always your birthright. Come home to yourself and watch what becomes possible from there.